Hi and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with modelling our chainsword. So in the previous tutorials we've built our bar and our blade and some bolts, and the one before we built this bearing. We're still undecided how we're going to fit this, and we sort of still need to do a little bit concepting because this is kind of in limbo. We're going to use it, we just don't know how at the moment. So in this tutorial we're going to build the sprocket drive, and it should be fairly simple. It shouldn't be too complex because the shapes are fairly simple. So first of all, I'm just going to go straight to my perspective, orthographic and front, and I'm going to go view, select camera and create an image plane. Then I'm going to navigate to my sword ref. And I've got this sprocket, which I'll load in. Just going to hide my chainsword. I'm just going to check I didn't move that. I'm just going to select my camera and import another one. So I just want to look through and find it. So we're getting loads of ref in here now. So this is the one I want to use mostly. So if I just scale this up, we're going to sort of do this sort of shape here. So we've got the sprocket here and this sort of C-clip, the axle, and this sort of chain, I guess, guard so it doesn't slip off. So you can sort of see we're not going to see a load of our sprockets, so we can keep it fairly simple. And we're not really going to see much of our bearing. Probably should have not gone so much detail, but this is, you're kind of wanting to learn hard surface modeling, so we're going to go a bit over the top with some things. So cool. So as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sprockets here, and if we go 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. We've got 7 here. So I'm going to go with, because we're going to be building this chainsaw as well, all this chain and linkage, I'm going to probably be more inclined to do it like this. So we're just going to make a very basic sprocket. So I'm going to start with a cylinder, rotate it around. And I'm just going to scale it up for now. Let's go to my X-ray so I can see over the top. And then I'm just going to go to my subdivision axis and change it to 7. And like I said, this is going to be very basic, so I'm just going to select all my faces and deselect the middle ones, press Ctrl E. Then I scale this out, but I don't want it to scale out like this. I want to turn my keep faces off. We'll worry about the thickness of it afterwards, so I want to sort of scale this how it is, but at the moment my manipulator's in world space, so if I go to if I double click on my tools, it opens up my tool settings. So I'm just going to change it to component. It just roughly scale it like that. So I'm going to go to my perspective. And first of all, I'm just going to select all my faces and just delete those. So this is just easier to work in a flat plane. Just going to center my pivot. Go back to orthographic front. Why is my pivot not centering? It's extremely weird. Having problems with that. So yeah. So I'm just going to select these edges. And scale this down. want to get too much. I still want to keep this sort of relative size, but yeah, we can sort of guesstimate this. So I'm just going to roll this around. I'm going to just match the shape of this top one. So if I just bring this down, just Control E, change it back to world. I just want to try and get that nice rounded top. Modeling toolkit, multi-cut. Let's add edge in there. So I know these have been really, really long tutorials, but I hope you guys have been enjoying them. Hopefully you guys will be master modelers soon, or if you're just doing it for just for practice, I guess. Okay, so I'm just going to deselect that. Control E, scale it in. Having some very odd things happening with my pivot point at the moment. I'm not sure what's happening, but if I center it, it doesn't center it. I'm just gonna select my edges, and before I duplicate it, I want to bevel these two so I get that nice curve in there, and I can add another. Let's only add one. I feel this is probably should be scaled in quite a bit more. Maybe not that, but let's do that afterwards, so we're not changing it too much. I think that should be scaled in. I'm just going to delete these faces. Like, it's not too difficult to sort of do this shape. I'm just going to select it. Control D. If I freeze my transformations, turn my wireframe on shaded on. So see this 51.4, so I'm just going to delete that. Edit, duplicate special. I've still got that in from. So the easiest way to do this is however many sprockets you're doing, and divide it by 360. So 360 divided by 7 is 51.42. So I'll duplicate that. So if I select all of this, go to mesh, combine. Just going to select my vertices, go to edit mesh and merge so they're welded. Then now I'm going to select these edges here. You get modeling toolkit and bevel, so it's a bit more rounded. So if you do press 3, it's a little bit softer. So that's about right. So we've got this sort of, we're not going to see this shape, but let's not worry too much about it because we're not going to see any of it. We'll just keep this round. So we've got this sprocket here. Turn off that X-ray. So I can just select my faces and Control E. And you can see in all the reference, they're actually quite thick sprockets. So let's just go for something like that. And let's select all the edges. It's annoying that it doesn't count that as an edge loop. So I'm just going to go around all the edges and bevel these. First of all, I'm going to see what bevel looks like before I commit to beveling them all. Yeah, this seems absolutely fine. So I'm just going to do the same here on this side. So this is probably going to be one of the simpler models. Yep, just bevel that. Then we'll just bevel this inside bit as well. It's G to repeat command. So for its 3. Let's turn our wireframe on shaded off. We sort of got this really basic sprocket shape. I'm not too bothered about the inside. It looks a bit gross. Let's fix it. Okay, so what I always use is just use my cylinder as reference. I'm going to go back to my front and orthographic. Bring this. I'm going to select my sprocket, then my cylinder. Then I can just go rigging, constraint, point. Why is that not in the center? There's something very wrong with my center pivot at the moment. It's not centering things to the center of things, so let's move forward. What's going on here? So let's just get this in the center. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 edges. So let's now just move these. Just going to move them, the vertices in line, only in the axis. I'm not selecting the middle. I just want to move it in one axis. I'm just going to bring that. Not that we're ever going to see it. You can leave it exactly how it is if you want. Because we're not going to see it. Just going to go around and just realign these with the vertices. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least it gives us peace of mind knowing that we did do it. So we can now delete that. Now we've got our pivot point is gone funky. So I'm just going to freeze transforms, delete the history. Tell off my wife. Shaded, sorry. Just have a look at the perspective. And now we have this. It's nothing special, it's just have I just noticed that we've got some. We have made it and made some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sided faces. So I was wondering why that looked a little bit weird. So we can fix that just by cutting here. You can see we've got the problem we're having with our smoothing. It's got one edge here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can't have that. Otherwise it will do funky stuff when we smooth it. So I'm just going to make these edges. I must have forgot just to attach them. I expect people will notice that as I was doing it, and I was like, waiting for it to sort of. So make sure you cut them on the vertice. And I'm just pressing enter in between each one. Cool, so now if we press 3, we can now see our smoothing's working much nicer. Cool, so let's go back to our orthographic. I know this is not exactly the same, but if we go to our shading X-ray, I don't know why I deleted that one earlier, so let's go through and build this sort of axle here. Safe to say it's probably something like that. And if we look at it, we got this sort of ring and this dip bit in the middle. So let's go to my front. I'm actually gonna align that. Let's hide this for now, just so it's not getting in the way. I'm just going to add some subdivision caps. I'm also going to reduce this down because I don't need that much. Probably something like 12 will be fine. Just so I can actually do this middle part. So I'm gonna just delete that. Go to my front. Select my edges. In the sort of it's hard to tell what this actually is, but you can probably see that this is slightly extruded, but we can delete this for now because there is like a divot in the middle. So if we Control E, scale that in. Then if you hold Shift and right click and fill hole, we now need to fix this hole so it's got edges. Just using my multi-cut. Cool. So select all these. Can't really see much in my orthographic, but I can see there's some sort of hole here. Kind of feels this extruded out an extremely tiny bit. Yeah, all of this, make sure you put all of this is slightly extruded down that way. Let's go to front again. Let's just scale this up. Select our polys, then Control E. And I think it's something like this. It's hard to tell if there's like a lumpy bit in the middle, but I think this should be more than enough. So if we sort of extrude that down. There might actually be, because we've got this gap here. So let's leave that for now. Let's go back to orthographic. And scale that up a bit. So let's make this sort of clamp shape. So yeah, again, we'll just start with a cylinder. Rotate it 90 degrees. Let's just go back to our X-ray. Now I'm just going to roughly scale this up. Unhide that. I'm going to scale that to the center. Cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to scale this up to roughly about that size. Go to my attribute, probably change this down a bit. Maybe, I don't know, 16 probably is good enough because it's got a good edge here. We're going to add our subdivision edges in. So we can sort of see our shape here. And it should be quite easy to make this, so we can now hide this. Let's just delete all this. Oh. Delete all the stuff we don't need in the middle. And delete this stuff. So now we've got, at least we know we've got a perfectly round shape here. So what we can do, we can just go around and just rotate this so it's kind of evenly offset. So I'm just going to select all these then. Delete everything else. So now we just have the flat circle. So we can see that we've got this edge here. This edge here comes quite far out. In fact, I don't want to do it like that. So if I select my edge, deselect these. Going to scale it up actually to where the beginning bit is. Then I'm going to extrude, use an extrude instead on these. You can even rearrange some of the vertices so it's a bit fits somewhat better. I'm just going to go to my edge, Control E, and just Control E again, rotate that around. That's a bit messy at the moment, but we'll fix that. So I'm just going to work on this topology, get that nice. Then we go back to our edge, Control E. We want to make sure that we still keep this as logical as possible. So at the moment we've kind of created more geometry for ourselves here. It's kind of very difficult to see how this shape is. I imagine it's goes in further than what we see because that's the kind of idea of these clips. They clip into secure it. So just cut there. Let's bridge that. A bridge here. Bridge here. Now we have this sort of problem where we've created a triangle, so we'll just fill that hole. Use the cut to go through the center of here. And now we fix that sort of triangle. Tidy up this topology a bit because it's a little bit wonky here, it's not looking great. We can sort of rearrange this to keep this nice round shape. So we can duplicate this and put this up here so we don't have to do it twice. So let's do this one here. So I'm going to match it absolutely perfectly. You kind of get the idea. Just target weld that there. Bridge that. I kind of want to put another edge loop in there. And let's tidy up this topology. So I'm trying to keep this as round as possible, but as long as this sort of clip thing does its job in securing the drive pin, we should all be fine. Well, so I don't have to do that again. What I can do is just duplicate this and translate X and minus that. Then I'm just going to rotate it around so that it sort of roughly fits that side. Then go to my modeling toolkit, select my faces and just delete all the ones I don't want. Then I'm going to do the same for here. I'm going to select both of these and go mesh, combine. I'm just going to select these vertices and go edit mesh and merge the center. Cool. So now I'm just going to adjust all this. I'm probably going to make another cylinder to double check this roundness, because this is probably very round and we've probably made it very wonky. So yeah, again, I'm going to make another cylinder. Cylinders seem to be my most popular shape. So I'm just going to select this and then that, and then rigging, constraint, point. There's something wrong with my fine on that one, so constraint point. Okay, no, it's fine. So I'm just going to scale this up. And I'm just going to roughly 1, 2, 3. That's actually very confusing to read that. Let's put that on top. 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12. 13, 14, 15, 16. We've got 16 edges. Let's change this to 16. Obviously that's 16 edges on that side, so that doesn't make any sense. So let's change that to 20. And let's just rotate this around. So that one, that one, that one. And we're just going to match edges. So yeah, it's 20. So I'm just going to scale this up. Select my little clamp. I'm just going to snap them only in the axis. I'm not selecting the middle, just snapping them in the X and Y. And this should keep everything at a nice roundness. We'll probably have to do this middle bit as well. So we'll add a cap subdivision in there as well. So we'll maintain everything to be nice and round within reason. I can't tell if that's I think that's about right. Let's go to the modeling kit. That's why sometimes it's easier just to go to the modeling kit and select stuff. I'm worried that it's not 100% symmetrical. See, this could let's see what that looks like. So I think actually it's looking pretty round. I think that's probably fine. And we can my bloody thing on. Push this in a bit. And the same with these, just so they're really in there. I actually think maybe a bit too thick. I really don't like how that's like that, so cool. So we've got this sort of clip. So we've got to perspective. Let's turn our X-ray off. If we select all our faces, just Control E, we'll extrude it out. Then I'm thinking, because we've got these and we don't want creases along here, I think for this it's probably going to be better if we do some sort of the inner fencing to smooth it. Because we've got a nice edge loop, that should work nicely. Cool, yeah, and I'm happy with that. Doesn't need to be anything amazing, it just needs to do its job as the clip. So we've got a sprocket, got a clip. So what we need to do, if we have our clip here, obviously we need to make that sort of indent. So I'm just using my multi-cut. I actually think that looking at that reference, looking at this, it kind of feels almost way too thin. It's probably a very thick clip, right, to hold it on, so I can't tell if that's... So I think that looking at that reference, I think this is actually, if we select that, I think that's slightly more bigger than that. And then this clip probably now goes Control E. Let's change the thickness on the inside. And it's probably something like that, I think. It's not a huge amount on the end, but don't forget, we're not doing that. I just realised, because we've still got to add an extra bit on. Cool. So let's just have a. I think that'll be fine. So now we're going to make this sort of this bit inside. So if I actually just go to poly modeling, just create another cylinder, and I'm just going to go to my orthographic front, turn my X-ray on. And we kind of do need this because it kind of stops the chain from slipping off. So let's just snap that to the center of there, so it's center. We don't need that many subdivisions, so we can go to our shape, bring this down to say 12. It's a fairly basic shape, so let's not worry too much. If we make our subdivision caps, we can now select all these faces in the middle, just delete those. Shooting it to my perspective. Turn off my X-ray. Just going to scale this in to something, because I can't quite see what this really is, but we can take a sort of guess from the shape. So before I do anything, I'm actually going to make sure that I it's probably easier for me just to bridge this, and instead of having to fix the edge loops. So we're never really going to see this, so I can select all that inside, hold shift, right click and choose transform component. So I use this if I want to sort of scale something in, but if you scale it, it's going to scale it and make it thin as well, so I don't really want to do that. So I can't really tell what's going on here, but I can fill this sort of area out with bits. I could probably duplicate this for now and use this for the second bit as well. So I'm just going to hide that for now and just focus on this bit. So if we look at this, we can sort of see almost it's a... it looks like it's a bit curved as well, so let's pull this out. Oh. And just select all our edges. May as well do the inside ones, just bevel these. It's like a quite soft edge, so obviously I'm not entirely sure what this part is, but and it looks like it's sort of, it's not perfectly flat, so I'm just going to control and left click my multi-cut, double click on the edge loop. I'm just going to put it in ever so slightly, just a tiny amount, just so we do get that sort of curved shape. And let's see if we bevel it, see if we can get a nicer curve. So if we press 3 now, turn our wireframe on shaded off, and obviously we can't actually see that really that well, so I'm just going to go add existing and choose a Fong on it. So we can sort of see that sheen. If I add assign new material, let's put a new one on it. This doesn't seem very... oh, it's on default material, that's why. So we can see we've got that sort of slight bentness in it. So if we put that in there, we also need to sort of have a look at this. I think we missed that, or haven't finished with that, so let's have a look at that before we go any further. I think I must have forgotten. So we need to sharpen these edges. Just going to do these ones first. I'm going to select all these edges. And I'm just going to bevel these. I want to make them really, like it's a machined axle, so I want to make it really sharp. And then I'm just going to bevel this edge, because that's probably a little bit softer. In fact, I'm just going to pull this out so I can see all the parts. Just going to select these edges now. Yeah, bevel these to sharpen them up. And I'm not going to worry about the other side because we'll probably duplicate that for the other side. So now you press 3, we can see we've got really nice sort of sharp edges. So just pull this in. So that sort of fits around there. And obviously these positions, this position is probably going to change. We're just sort of roughly concepting stuff and getting it relatively correct. I kind of feel that's maybe a bit flawed. I think that should be fine. Cool, so we got some nice detail there. So now let's do the, if we smooth that so we can see that as well. Sometimes it's easier to see everything in the smoothed view. And if we just assign the Fong, we can sort of see how that's all reacting. And we've not got any weird mesh going on, so it's all looking really nice and clean. So now the second shape, we're just going to build this bit. So we can unhide that cylinder. And I'm going to go back to my orthographic front view and just go back to my X-ray. And I will just scale this up for now. I'm just going to scale it up until it matches that outer edge. Some strange stuff going on there, but we can try and get it as close as possible. So I'm just going to go back to my perspective and tear off a copy, so I can just keep it down in the corner. Then go to my orthographic front. So I want to turn this off X-ray. Going to select my faces, and if I scale, like I said, if I scale this out now, I'm slowly actually making this wider, and I don't want to do that. So that's why I use transform component. So hold shift and transform. Now this just pulls it directly out. And obviously we're not dead center on this sort of picture, so I'm just going to always use, because for the spokes, the sprocket, I use this top one as reference. Then I assume that these are all going to be equally spaced, so I'll treat this the same here. And I'm just focusing on this part here. Cool. So I'm just going to do a multi-cut. I'm going to add a cut here for that little beveled edge. And do you know what? I think that it's hard to tell what's really going on without knowing it. The parts in depth, I don't know what these parts are. All I can do is sort of speculate on what's happening. So I'm just going to use my transform component again and bring that further in so it's behind it. We'll worry about the thickness in a minute. So looking at that, it's probably level with that, but looking at that, that kind of looks like it dips under. So I want to sort of replicate that as well. So I'm going to select my multi-cut. I'm not going to go right to the edge. I'm just going to cut here. Then I'm going to select my faces. So this could be quite difficult to see without. Oh, I'm actually going to select my edge and push this in. So I want to make that sort of lump, that little divot part. So I'm actually going to pull this out, pull it right in, something like that. I'm just going to multi-cut here. Select that edge and bevel that. I kind of want to tighten this up. Let's add a segment in there, just so it looks. Go to my UV mode, object mode, just so we get that sort of folding in part. What we can do is just press 3 and just test that. I think that's probably looking correct, but I think our outer edge is a bit too far out. So just select this edge, just scale it. I'm going to select this edge, scale it. select this next edge and scale that. So now I can see I've got this sort of a very clear sort of lip down going into there. Obviously it'll be sharper once we do these edges as well. So now we're just going to do this sort of section around here. Let's select these faces on the edge loop. Press Ctrl E to extrude. It's only a tiny amount. And then I can do my offset. And you can see that I've actually extruded it probably a little bit too much. Because it only needs to be like a really small amount. Cool. So I'm just going to select my edges. Select this edge. And this edge. This one here. This one here. And that one. And let's just bevel that and see how that looks. Let's make this a little bit larger so we can see. I want to make it quite tight. Let's turn our wireframe on shaded off. So you can see we've got this nice little lip, but I think that should be alright. If you want, we can actually add another edge loop in there. Select that, select your edge. Then we can just ever so slightly pull it out to help that roundness of the shape. So now we can see that it's looking much rounder. So if we push this back in. And trying to keep as close to the reference as possible. And this is what's going to help us with the sort of realism. I think that should be okay. That's enough to stop the chain going off. And I would think that goes tight on there like that. So let's just add the Fong material. It's nice to see it when it's shiny because then it just really reveals any sort of mess in the topology or anything like that. But it's all looking pretty good. So for this part, we're pretty much done. So we need to make a second sprocket because this is going to power. This is what the chain's going to go around. But now but we also need to power this, so we're going to have another sprocket sort of behind this. And if I just minimize that, and I'll go to my perspective here. So this is where we start sort of Frankensteining it, but we're going to want to use like real stuff. So if I just go to my panels, orthographic, sorry, I've just come from there. Let's go to my front. And we're just going to make one more sprocket to sort of offset powers, and that'll probably be it for this tutorial. So we're just going to go select, view, select camera, image plane, and import image. Then I'm just going to go to my reference folder. If we look at our sprocket, so I want to create something like this. So we have multiple sprockets, and so if we look at this, we're going to pretend that this is, because that's the clutch, and we won't need that. We're going to put the sprocket behind here, and we're going to sort of somehow figure out how to mount that. Yeah, well, we'll see what it looks like. So we're going to create this now. I think that was the only sprocket reference. So I like this. This is quite, we can do this. It's quite complicated. Well, it's not super complicated. I don't think there's any more sprockets in here. No. So I like this because it's just kind of, there's nothing special about it. It's kind of basic. We don't want loads of fancy stuff. So just open. And I'm just going to hide this. I don't really need that one anymore. So I'm just going to pull this over here. Go to my attribute editor and change this to 0.7. Or, yeah, no, 0.7. So we can sort of visualize how this is going to go. So that's going to be around there. And we sort of need to make this rounded shape. We don't want to make it too much bigger than the actual sprocket because we also need to hold this thing. So we need to figure out how we're also going to attach it as well. So we could use some bolts here to attach through. Or I think we're at this level where we're not really ever going to see it, but we can we have a lot of creative control over this. It's like I say, we're constantly going to be concepting this and figuring it out. But it's this basic shape that we're going to make now. So we're going to do, as always, start with a cylinder. Just going to rotate this around. Just going to reset all my transforms. Just so nothing strange happens with it, because I was having some very odd things happen in the last set of tutorials. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So annoyingly we've got another odd number. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to actually rotate this so that's flat, and rotate. I'm going to sort of align this to the shape I want. So I'm just, in fact, if we don't have to completely trace this. We can do a pretty good guesstimation on how it's going to look. So first of all, I'm just going to go to my polycinder and add a cap. I can add a couple because we can delete them. And what I want to do is so we can create this. My mouse has gone funny. So we can create this shape. Let's just rotate this around. Select this face and deselect that. If we Control E, push it up to there. And Control E again. So we're not going to really see a ton of this, but we can model it as best we can. I'm just going to select my scale tool and make sure it's in component. Then go to my X-ray, and I'm just going to match this side. So we've got a pretty basic shape there. I'm actually going to rotate this around so it's a little bit more even on each side. I'm just going to go to my multi-cut. We want to get that curve. Make sure I move my edges. Let's just go in and select our edges and just go to our world. And let's try and just manually get this nice sort of rounded part here. Let's just get this last top. I think that should be okay. If we smooth that, we can sort of see it was working. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to zero out. If I freeze my transforms, I'm going to undo that actually and just freeze my transforms there. So I'm just going to duplicate this and hide that one. And all I want to do is just delete all these faces. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I think it was 15, sorry. So if we do 360 divided by 15, that's 24. So now if we go edit, duplicate special, and let's reset this to 24 and 14, duplicate special. That's now rotated it all the way around. So now if we select all of these, mesh combine, and if we center the pivot, yes. Cool. So now if we unhide the rest, in fact we don't need to at the moment, we just hide that. And we can go to our vertex. Actually going to undo that because I want to make sure that we can add an edge loop in here. So I'm just going to go edit, duplicate special, and just duplicate special again. And now we've got the gaps that we wanted. But I actually, oh God, I didn't select all of those, so I'm actually going to pull that back actually. This, so it's a bit smoother. Then I'm going to duplicate special, so edit. I can just select that again, it will remember. And I can select all my meshes and go edit mesh, combine. I'm just going to go to my perspective. And I'm just going to delete all those faces. So now we just have these planes. I'm just going to go around and bridge these. I'm just going to select all these edges, and I should be able to select. So I'm just selecting the edges and pressing G. Probably could have done this in the duplicate special, but instead of messing around with it, let's just go through and get it done. So we've now done that. So if we go to our perspective, sorry, orthographic and front. Select all these edges and Control E. And if we just select that, we can scale that in. So how do we want to do this? Do we want to do these holes? Are we ever going to see these holes? So not really. I don't think we should worry about those holes. So if we just Control E again. We can bring this all the way into that sort of center part. Go to perspective. Let's just push this out of the way for now. Go to our shading and turn our X-ray off. So now we've made this basic sprocket. What we can do is now let's go to our faces. Select it all and just Control E. We can pull this out roughly to the thickness that it should be. Cool. So now our second thing is that we've kind of got this. It's not flat, so we need to sort of curve this as well. So the best thing for us to do here is actually go back to our orthographic. Because I've now extruded it, I want to be able to see it in the thickness. So I want to go to my front. And I'm just going to delete these faces. And this face here, because this face is going to be joined by this side. And I'm just going to put perspective to check I've got no extra faces. Delete those. Cool, so now I need to make this sort of, you can see it sort of curves in slightly. So we can do that quite simply just by select all our first set of edges. Make sure our scale is set to world. And I'm just going to scale it slightly. Deselect these ones. Then I'm just going to continue that scale until it's sort of curving. And you can play around with as much as you want with this. Obviously, it makes it look a lot nicer if it's curved. Cool. Obviously, once we bevel this, it should look all fine. So now we've curved that, we can go straight back to Edit and select Duplicate Special again. And now that's created all the rest. So if I select this one, Mesh Combine, now all I need to do is select all my vertices. You don't have to select all of them, but it's just easier because they should be either on top or pretty close, and they're not quite lining up, but they should be fine. And we'll just do Merge. So we need to change our threshold slightly. So if we change this to 0.05, we just want to bring this up until those are merged without merging the rest of it. So now we've created this sort of nice little sprocket. If we press 3, we can see it's kind of looking there, but we need to bevel our edges. So we can bevel these edges, it's no problem. because we're not ever going to see them unless you're planning on doing like a complete breakdown as well. So it's entirely up to you. But I will undo that. Select all these faces and just transform component them in a bit more. Select these edges and bevel them. Cool. So obviously I can select all these, but then I'm gonna have to go around and select all the little bits, and it gets a bit of a pain. So I'm just gonna use my multi-cut instead, and I'm gonna use my edge loops that I've created. So I'm gonna a multi-cut here, and that should give us a nice tight edge around there. So if I press 3, it's giving us a pretty decent tight edge. Now I need to do the same around here. Hopefully if I press 3 now, we can see that we've got our sprocket. And it's looking pretty good. So let's delete all the history of that. I'm just going to hold V, snap it to the center of this pin. And I think we definitely need to scale this up a bit, because if the chains are going to be like colliding. So if we scale this up to make sure our chains are not colliding. Obviously that now means we've probably not going to see a great deal of our bearing. So let's select all this, Control D, let's pivot, and this is obviously way too big. It's slowly coming together. Obviously it's still a bit, we've still got a long way to go, but once it's done, it should be pretty cool. Let's actually get this. We can align this all properly at a different time. So look at that in for X-ray off. Ooh, don't scale it that way. And yeah, we ain't gonna see. We might see little bits of our bearing, but we know it's there. So obviously we're gonna have some sort of collision here, which we don't want this to happen. So we might actually have to move this back a little bit, or figure out how, because obviously this bolt's massive. We can't have a wide chain going past that, so we have to kind of figure that one out as well. Maybe we make a sort of screw bolt. But yeah, I think it's getting there. We're sort of starting to fill out some of the parts. So let's see, probably want to... And I think for the sake of the busyness, we can maybe add some bolts in around here or something, and we'll figure out how we're actually going to attach that. This is a problem for sure, how we're going to sort these bolts out. Let's select this bolt and actually have a look. So maybe it might be a case of let's just scale this. And we'll have to do the same for this. We can have some freedom with how we actually build this. Let's tuck this away. And we're going to have to make some different types of bolts anyway, so don't worry too much about that. We're still, like I say, we're modeling it and concepting at the same time, so yeah, don't worry too much about that. And yeah, we're pretty much done for the sort of... Do we want to sort of fix this to there? We can sort of fake some, we can pretend it's sort of welded maybe. And yeah, I don't think we're going to see a huge amount here, so let's not worry too much about that. We can leave that down to the imagination. Mostly keeping stuff on the outside to keep it a bit more logical. But yeah, we're pretty much done with this. We've built the sort of the chainsaw chain drive, and now we've built this sort of drive here, which is going to come from the electric motors. So for this tutorial, we're pretty much done. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.